Hello everyone, and welcome to the first Classic Movie Monday review. And today I've decided, as you can tell by the title, that I am going to talk about Psycho. Yes, Psycho, that came out, I believe, in 1960. This film has been, I think, fairly well recognized and fairly heard of. It seems that people put it on a very high pedestal when it comes to horror films and the horror genre. And I think a lot of other films have tried to draw out inspiration from this particular film and try to create a sort of unsettling environment in the same way that Psycho tries to encapsulate. And one of the reasons I think that makes this film so good is the fact that it can draw you in through the plot and through the acting as well as the characters. You'll notice that a lot of horror films actually today really don't follow this kind of similar formula as Psycho, and I think that's actually brought the genre down a lot, especially considering that they do try to make their villain a little bit more complex in this film. And in a lot of horror movies that you see today, it seems like that they don't really focus so much in on the villain as they do on the gore and the violence and the visuals, and don't dive in really into the psychology of someone who is maybe messed up from an event that maybe happened in their lives. And really this is what Psycho is trying to bring forth to the table as a horror film. It's trying to make you understand sort of how maybe somebody could become a certain way. And I think it does a really good job of bringing that out, in particular with Norman Bates, who is one of the main characters in Psycho, played by Anthony Perkins. And Anthony does a really good job of showing you who Norman Bates is, even though there is a lot of mystery surrounding him. Again, it's not a character that is really fully exposed out there, and who we really know as to why he ended up the way he becomes in the film. But what we do know is enough for us to maybe not necessarily be sympathetic towards, but to kind of have an understanding of the mindset that he as a character might be in. So really I think it comes a lot to the acting as well as the characters in general, because for the most part the characters that get tied into this story, in particular Leela Crane and Sam Loomis, who are played by Vera Miles and John Gavin respectively, they're actually not like the typical horror movie characters where they're just kind of set up to die and you maybe want them to die or you don't feel any sympathy for them. But in this film, it really makes you want to root for them, and you really want them to figure out what ended up happening to one of the other characters, whose name is Marion Crane and is played by Janet Leigh. And it's really hard for me to discuss this plot because, again, if I do start talking about it, it's really just already going to give stuff away. But for what you need to know going in is it's basically these two people, Leela and Sam, who are trying to find Leela's sister, Marion, and Sam is the boyfriend of Marion. So they're just trying to figure out what ended up happening to her, and they sort of, one thing leads to another, and then they kind of are revealed the kind of scenario that ended up occurring and what led to Marion being in the state that she ends up being in. So you really get that sense of mystery as well. Like, Layla and Sam are trying to solve a problem, and they go through various stages in order to figure it out. And you just root for them because you feel like that they could be just normal people, and they don't need to be props to be set up to be killed. And that's why I think this film executes itself really well. In particular, I don't want to give too much away regarding Norman Bates. Just know that he is somebody who has a past, and that past really affects him as a character, and you will understand as the film goes on what kind of circumstances led up to that. And I think really that's all that needs to be really addressed when it comes to sort of the plot and characters, because again, if I give any of this plot away, it's already gonna spoil like the whole movie. So it's really hard to really discuss Psycho, because it is one of those films where if you do talk about what's going on, you kind of start to already know, okay, what ends up leading to what. So I don't really want to spoil it for anybody who has not seen it. There's one scene that a lot of people draw an interest in, and that's the shower scene where Marion is taking a shower, and then something happens to her while she's taking a shower. And for those who've seen the film, clearly know what I'm talking about, but it's one of those scenes where even if you haven't seen the film, it's something that a lot of people seem to feel like it was one of those moments within cinema history that had an idea of displaying horror to people, and I think it might have terrified a lot of people, especially when it first came out. It looks a little bit rather silly now. Be prepared for it to look a little odd, because it is an old film. So it's not the same as horror films today, for sure. So all of the horror that's in it is mostly focused in on trying to just create an eerie atmosphere, but not overindulging itself in gore and violence. And that's what I really enjoy about this film, like that it doesn't take it to that level where it's too overwhelming. And I think a lot of horror films can actually learn from this formula. And I think a lot of horror films should kind of draw into these kinds of things. And it seems like a lot of them don't do it now. But I think this film in particular was a starting point for a lot of other films that were to come. I believe even the Nostalgia Critic mentioned at one point that when Norman Bates smiles, it kind of draws an inspiration from is kind of an inspiration to the for the Clockwork Orange with Alex's character, and how he smiles too, and how it's fairly similar. And you really get the sense of horror without even being shown it. You can just look at how somebody smiles and feel the terror. You don't even need to see any blood. You don't need to see any violence. You can just see it, all of it just in somebody's simple expression. And I think those simplistic kinds of moments really make the film stand out. And if you go to Universal, which I do sometimes with my family, they still have the Norman Bates place up where they made the film, the Bates Motel, and sometimes Norman Bates comes out to play, and he'll sometimes take out a body and put it in the trunk of a car, and then you'll see him take out his knife and then start walking to where the Universal buses stop at. And then sometimes he'll try to get one of the audience members. But again, it's all for show, all for play. And it's interesting how in particular Universal is so dedicated to their older films, and I think that's really nice that they still have that there, because it is a fairly old film, really over 50 years old. So it is one of those films that I think people should pay more attention to, and where I think a lot of ground was made for the genre. And it's just by the simplicity of it. Again, this plot is not really that over the top, overly indulgent. It's very simple. It's just, what happened to Marion? What's this Bates Motel? What's that house up there? You'll discover where Norman Bates lives and what that house sort of represents in the film. So really, it's a film that knows how to make horror in its most simplistic form, but say so much, and that's what I think makes it so great. Again, I know that there will be people that in the end will still dislike it because it is horror, because there are probably some people who feel that showing any form of killing is bad and it shouldn't be encouraged. And even though I would say, yeah, it's not nice to show people dying, I think it's supposed to give the audience a sense of what a certain mind state could bring out in a person. And sometimes those things are things that we're not comfortable with. And again, this film is not intended to make you feel a bit comfortable. Don't feel like it's like you go to the Bates Motel and it's like, oh, it's a little cloudy with some sunshine. No, it's got lightning and thunder and rain and stuff. Don't feel like this is a sugar-coated horror film. It's not, but it's very simplistic in that it doesn't over hammer the horror at you. It builds suspense, it builds drama, it exposes you to the characters, it gives you a understanding of what the film is trying to say. And by doing it in a way that doesn't make it so that it's overusing violence. So that's what I think is so interesting about this film, and what I find really enjoyable about it. And I think even the recent film that came out about Hitchcock, the director of this film, even that film focused in on Psycho, and it was almost like that they could not have an Alfred Hitchcock movie without one of his most famous works. And I find that really fascinating, and I think it really works to the film's advantage throughout the ages. And I really hope it does live on, and I hope people recognize it. I hope that if people haven't heard of it, that they at least see it once. But again, what you have to understand is that this was made a long time ago, so it's obviously not going to be the same as a horror film as you would see today. That's not to say that if you do join horror films of today that you won't like this approach, but from what I'm saying, I think you can tell whether or not you would prefer that approach. Now, I guess from what I can tell, that's really all you need to know when it comes to Psycho. It's fairly simple, straightforward plot that mixes it in with mystery, which I think is interesting, and I would be happy if they could somehow do this more with films today, where they could mix history with or mystery with horror, because I think that adds a little bit more suspense. I think that adds a little bit more intelligence, and I think makes the audience think about what they're watching. But I think that's really all I can say about Psycho. Any questions, comments, concerns, more than happy to answer them, and just make sure that when you're taking a shower to, watch, and make sure nobody is is looking. But because sometimes, even when I go into the shower, and this is even when I didn't even see the film, but when you see that one scene, for some reason it kind of stays with you, and if a film can do that, I think that says something. But I believe that's really all that I can address about it. But if anybody has any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But until next time, everybody, bye-bye. Thank you so much for watching.